YouTube? In today's video, we're going head to head with the iPhone 16 Pro Max versus the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And I know there's a running joke that these are the exact same phones, but there are key differences. I'm going to be breaking down what exactly is different in between the iPhone 16 Pro Max and last year's iPhone 15 Pro Max. Some people out there like to upgrade every year. Some people don't. Some people wait 2 to 3 years. Some people are coming from older devices, and you might be wanting to pick in between these two. Maybe you see a deal on the 15 Pro Max in comparison to the full price of the 16 Pro Max. So let's break it all down. Now, the first place we'll get started is in size, dimensions, and weight. Now, when it comes to the weight of these two devices, the 16 Pro Max has gotten a little slight heftier. You know, we got a little bit bigger battery in here, bigger chassis, bigger screen. So this thing is coming in at 227 grams versus the 221 grams of last year's model. Now, when we get into the dimensions, as far as the body sizing, is definitely a slight difference. And I'm going to give you the math on it. So from a height perspective, you have 163 millimeters versus 159.9 millimeters. From a width perspective, you have 77.6 millimeters versus 76.7 millimeters. And when we get into the thinness, they're the exact same, 8.3 millimeters to be exact. Now, from an everyday user perspective, as someone who had the 15 Pro Max for the entire year and used it and now has the 16 Pro Max, I don't feel or see necessarily much of a difference when it comes from this perspective of just size, weight, and dimensions. They're slightly different, and honestly, it's not like one is extremely heavier than the other or one is extremely taller than the other. So it's pretty much negligible, but you do get something different when you flip over to this screen, and that's going to be a different size screen, going from the 6.7 inch screen that we had on the 15 Pro Max into this nice 6.9 inch screen on the 16 Pro Max. So a difference of 0.2 inches. And the cool part is the PPI, like the pixel density, is exactly the same. Although the amount of pixels are different, they still kept the same pixel density, which means just as crisp as the 15 Pro Max's screen is as the 16 Pro Max's screen, even with the difference of size. So you're not getting technically a better screen on either or. You're getting the same quality of pixel density. So with the 16 Pro Max, you have a 1320 by 2868 pixel display with a 460 PPI versus the 1290 by 2796 pixel display with 460 PPI. So what does all of that mean? It's 0.2 inches of preference. And also, the bezels have shrunk. You have a 1.55 millimeter bezel on the 15 Pro Max versus a 1.2 millimeter bezel on the 16 Pro Max. So those of you who appreciate like thinner bezels, 16 Pro Max is going to appeal to you more than the 15 Pro Max. Is it necessary? No. Is it nice? Yes. And another thing when it comes to the screens is the 16 Pro Max has a lower minimum nit brightness versus this one, which is not recorded as to what the minimum nits are, but they're higher than the 16 Pro Max. So the fact that the 16 Pro Max can reduce its total minimum brightness to 1 single nit versus this one, which is higher, that's why you're gonna get a better battery life, which we're gonna talk about in the near future. Now, if we get in the area of design, both of these are rocking the same titanium, aluminum fused sidings, but when we get into the front glass, it's a different generation of ceramic glass. Per Apple's claim, the 16 Pro Max is 50% more durable than the 15 Pro Max with its front ceramic glass. And then we can talk about the internals from a chip perspective. We have the A18 Pro versus the A17 Pro. And both of these are on 3 nanometer architectures. The only difference is this is the first gen 3 nanometer and this is the second gen 3 nanometer. And there is a slight performance boost, as is every year with every A chip. The reality is how many average users use that performance, and so the saying goes. But nevertheless, it's nice to know that there is so much headroom inside of your device when you roll with the iPhone. Not saying that there isn't on the Android, because the Snapdragon 8 Gen chips have been crushing. Absolutely. But this is not a versus of, yeah. Okay, so another difference that we can point out in the area of performance is going to be the Wi-Fi chips. This one's Wi-Fi 6E, while this one now has Wi-Fi 7. Okay, so before we get into battery life, which is a difference between these two devices, we're gonna talk about the camera because there are some physical changes within our cameras. Now, it's not every single camera, but when you get into the ultra wide, we're no longer on the 12 megapixel ultra wide that we had on the 15 Pro Max. We now have a 48 megapixel ultra wide on the 16 Pro Max. So let's just test that really quick here in the studio. Boom. And then, boom. All right. So I took a photo of the same object with both devices. So we'll see how these pictures line up as well. Let me know down in the comment section below. Is that difference significant enough? Battery life, let's talk about it. First thing first, MagSafe charging speeds. You can only get up to 15 watts MagSafe charging on the 15 Pro Max, as you can get up to 25 watts MagSafe charging on the 16 Pro Max. Now there's some kind of proprietariness going on with Apple's special MagSafe puck, which I did order, so I'm gonna show you guys and test that as well. But there is a difference of wireless MagSafe charging speeds in between the two. Battery sizing, 4,685 milliamp hours versus 4,441 milliamp hours on the 15 Pro Max. So there is a slight increase. Also, when you have a new processing chip, which is even more optimized to get more battery life, you're gonna see a boost or an increase, shall we say, when you get into new gen devices. So what is that looking like in between these two? Okay, so when it comes to battery, let's kind of line it up like this. When you're just browsing on the 16 Pro Max, you got 22 hours and 39 minutes versus the 15 Pro Max's 19 hours and 20 minutes. Now, when you're just doing video, you got 10 hours and 24 minutes on the 16 Pro Max versus the 15 Pro Max's 9 hours and 45 minutes. Now, when you did gaming, you got 12 hours and 4 minutes with the 16 Pro Max versus the 15 Pro Max's 9 hours and 36 minutes. So when you kind of like bring all that together, on average, you got about 8 hours and 30 minutes of total battery life estimated versus 7 hours and 25 minutes of estimated battery life. And just to put something in perspective, with the S24 Ultra, you only got a total estimated of 6 hours and 46 minutes. Now, as far as charging speeds go, wired, 1 hour and 42 minutes versus 2 hours and 1 minute wired. And then wireless, 1 hour and 58 minutes versus 2 hours and 36 minutes. 30-minute wireless charge, you're getting 42% on the 16 Pro Max versus just 29% on the 15 Pro Max. Quite a significant difference in battery charging speeds and overall just battery performance. The 16 Pro Max is actually a nice significant battery upgrade of all of the iPhones in a while. So the 15 Pro Max was nice, it was great battery, but the 16 Pro Max is better battery. And for my gamers out there who want to game, you're definitely going to get more gaming out of the 16 Pro Max versus the 15 Pro Max. So that's just something to keep in mind as a differentiator in between the two, especially if you're just buying brand new and not upgrading. Battery life is 100,000% subjective to the user and how you use your device. So whether or not you see that increase and how it is implemented in your user experience is totally up to how you use your device. So that ultimately, when it comes to battery, is going to come up to you as to how you feel the difference is. But there is a significant difference in optimization and battery size that makes the 16 Pro Max the better battery. But the 15 Pro Max wasn't a bad battery, at least not for me. And I mean, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to accept and appreciate the extended battery life that I'm getting in the 16 Pro Max in comparison to the 15 Pro Max, but I would have been fine either way. But more is better, so I'm actually doing better. I'll take it. And there's also a new camera control button. So this is something that's physically different that you can't emulate or recreate on the 15 Pro Max. And with this camera control button comes the visual intelligence alongside it, but Apple Intelligence is also coming to the 15 Pro Max. So you're not fully missing out. There's a slight edge with the 16 Pro Max for Apple Intelligence, but all in all, you're gonna have access no matter which one of these devices you own. whenever Apple Intelligence actually arrives. On another note, like in general, these two devices are lining up very much neck and neck. Again, we are in the era of refinements, and the 16 Pro Max is more refined than the 15 Pro Max, as it should be. And for people coming from like an iPhone 12 or iPhone 11, maybe even an iPhone 13, I've been seeing a lot of iPhone 13 Pro Max users switching to the 16 Pro Max and happy with that. So that 3-year mark and older serves to be like the ideal upgrade pattern in the iPhone hemisphere if you want to feel the upgrade. Now, for those of you who upgrade every single year or use these devices every single year, the incremental changes are just that much, more incremental for you. But the effects for the people who are coming from older phones are not buying the same phone. That's why it's so funny to, everyone always talk about, oh, year after year, da-da-da-da-da. But I mean, Samsung's on the same cycle. I mean, Pixel is developing, so you're seeing somewhat of like more design changes and so forth, but they're just trying to find their way. It's all on incremental updates as of today. So when it comes to the 16 Pro Max to the 15 Pro Max, in all actuality, it is actually an upgrade from the 15 Pro Max to the 16 Pro Max. It's just an incremental one. And there are some things that are on the 16 Pro Max that's separated from the 15 Pro Max, such as this, camera control button right there and the 48 megapixel ultra wide that's on here, but it's not a lot. So, is there one that is better? Not necessarily. If you were on the 15 Pro Max, should you upgrade to the 16 Pro Max? Not necessarily, but if you got it and you want to, everyone's gonna do what they wanna do. If you wanna upgrade year after year, I don't knock that. I don't think there's nothing wrong with upgrading year after year. Is it necessary? Absolutely not. As you see, when you wait longer, I think you feel it more, but there's some people who just want the latest and greatest and wanna be on that, technological edge. And that's perfectly fine. So, in a nutshell, yes, the 16 Pro Max is different from the 15 Pro Max, and yes, it is an upgrade, an incremental one, but an upgrade nevertheless. Is it necessary to upgrade from the 15 Pro Max to the 16 Pro Max? Nah. My gauge for upgrading would be iPhone 13 Pro Max, iPhone 12 series, 11 series, and so on. Those are the people who are gonna upgrade and really feel the upgrade. Again, it's exciting. It's still a new device that you can enjoy. Is just how much more will you enjoy it than last year's device.
I rise and I wake and I gotta go get it. I'm making my bed and it's straight to the digits.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have to cut that video down, boy. That joint right.
No cup of jokers, this is acidic, so I take a shot with the lemon and ginger. Look in the mirror like, yeah, I'm that. Look in the mirror like, I'm fitted. Looking outside like the world is all mine. Look in the mirror like, go get it. I gotta get to the scene, I gotta get to the bag now. I can't be chasing on these. They getting, they feeling and dragged down. That's why they just crash out.